We're going to begin tonight with a dramatic day in the Senate impeachment trial. The House managers prosecuting President Trump spent their second day of arguments laying out their case for Article 1 and how they say the president abused his power. The president is taunting Democrats for refusing to make a deal, allowing him to call witnesses in exchange for letting them call his top aides. This is a new poll suggests a majority of Americans from both parties want to hear that new testimony. Tonight, we're learning when the president's lawyers could start making their own arguments. And it can't come soon enough for the president, who has spent his time launching an escalating series of attacks on Twitter.
Trump is publicly freaking out about being impeached for a third time. And yeah, you heard that right, third time. Because impeachment isn't some hypothetical threat anymore. It's live. There's a real impeachment resolution sitting in the House of Representatives right now, with 7 full articles spelling out Trump's alleged high crimes and misdemeanors. And Democrats are actively calling for impeachment proceedings to begin over Trump's Venezuela operation. One House Democrat just forced a surprise impeachment vote on the floor that caught everyone off guard. And Trump himself is warning his supporters that if Democrats take back the House, they're going to impeach him again. He's using it as a fundraising tool. He's using it to fire up his base. And that tells you how seriously he's taking this. Because Trump doesn't panic unless he thinks something could actually hurt him. And a third impeachment would be historically unprecedented. Even if the Senate doesn't convict, the process itself does damage. It dominates the news cycle, exposes more abuses, and makes it harder for him to govern. Trump knows that.
Breaking news tonight, a deeply divided moment playing out in American history as we come on the air. President Trump has just been impeached on both Article 1, abuse of power, and on Article 2, obstruction of Congress. The votes down party lines as predicted. And all day long here, we've been watching the short bursts of anger, the closing arguments from both sides. Democrats arguing the evidence was clear, arguing the president used the power of his office for personal and political gain with this election.
Violation of First Amendment rights, creation of an unlawful office, bribery and corruption and tyranny. 7 articles, documented, sitting in the House right now. The resolution explicitly states that Trump is unfit to govern and will remain a threat to the Constitution if allowed to remain in office. So this isn't theoretical. This is a ready-made impeachment vehicle that House leadership can activate whenever they decide the moment is right. It's sitting on the shelf, waiting to be used. And recent events, especially Trump's Venezuela operation, are pushing Democrats closer and closer to pulling the trigger. Because Trump just did something absolutely insane in Venezuela. He ordered a military operation that bombed Caracas, seized President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, and took control of Venezuelan oil assets. An actual military strike against a sovereign nation without congressional approval. An operation that looks a whole lot like an illegal invasion and coup. And Democrats immediately started calling it an impeachable offense. Representative April Milan Delaney said the Democratic caucus should imminently consider impeachment proceedings. California State Senator Scott Wiener, who's running for Congress, called it an illegal invasion and coup that violates the Constitution and international law. He said Trump did it as a favor to American oil executives. Representative Dan Goldman said Trump is using illegal and unconstitutional tactics that amount to an impeachable offense and embolden dictators around the world. These aren't random backbenchers making noise. These are prominent Democrats explicitly connecting Trump's Venezuela operation to that existing impeachment resolution and saying this is the kind of offense that should trigger formal proceedings. And while House Democratic leadership is being cautious, individual Democrats are already forcing the issue. CNN reported that a rogue House Democrat recently surprised colleagues by forcing an impeachment vote on the floor. Just brought it up unexpectedly and made everyone vote on it. That shows you the pressure inside the Democratic caucus is real. Some members aren't willing to wait for leadership. They're using the existing articles to put impeachment back on the agenda right now. And every time that happens, it normalizes the idea. It builds momentum. And Trump knows it. That's why he's out there warning his supporters that Democrats will impeach him again if they take back the House. He's literally fundraising off the threat of a third impeachment. He's using it to drive turnout. And yeah, part of that is strategic. He wants to portray himself as a victim and energize his base. But part of it is also genuine fear, because Trump understands a third impeachment would cement his reputation as the most lawless president in American history. No president has ever been impeached 3 times. So Trump is caught in this trap where he needs to talk about impeachment to mobilize his supporters, but every time he talks about it, he draws more attention to the very real possibility that it could actually happen. Let's break down exactly what's in that impeachment resolution and why Trump should be genuinely worried right now. All right, so let's dig into HRES 353, this impeachment resolution that's sitting in the House right now, because understanding what's actually in this document is crucial. The resolution was introduced in April 2025, and it's a detailed legal document with 7 specific articles of impeachment. Each article lays out a different category of alleged high crimes and misdemeanors. Article 1 is obstruction of justice and violation of due process. This covers attempts to interfere with investigations, intimidate witnesses, and block congressional oversight. Article 2 is usurpation of Congress's appropriations power, spending money Congress didn't authorize, withholding funds Congress did, treating the budget like it's his to control. Article 3 is abuse of trade powers and international aggression. This is where Venezuela becomes really relevant, because it accuses Trump of using trade policy and military force to advance personal interests rather than legitimate national security goals, including military aggression without proper authorization. The Venezuela operation fits directly into that. Article 4 is violation of First Amendment rights, attacks on the press, threats against protesters, using federal power to punish speech he doesn't like. Article 5 is creation of an unlawful office, appointing acting officials who haven't been confirmed by the Senate and keeping them in place past legal limits, building pseudo-legal positions filled with loyalists. Article 6 is bribery and corruption, the allegations that he used the presidency to enrich himself and accepted benefits in exchange for favorable treatment. And Article 7 is tyranny, arguing Trump has engaged in a pattern of behavior that amounts to tyrannical rule, ignoring the other branches, treating the Constitution as optional, and refusing limits on his authority. Now, the resolution concludes by saying Trump is unfit to govern and will remain a threat to the Constitution if allowed to remain in office. That's what's sitting in the House right now. 7 articles, ready to go whenever Democrats decide to activate them. And then Trump went and did the Venezuela thing, which made the whole document feel a lot less symbolic. Here's what happened. Trump ordered U.S. military forces to conduct strikes in Venezuela. They bombed targets in Caracas. They went in and physically seized President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. They took them into U.S. custody, and they secured control of Venezuelan oil infrastructure. This wasn't just sanctions or diplomatic pressure. This was actual military action, American forces invading another country and taking its leader. And Trump did all of this without congressional authorization. He didn't go to Congress and ask for approval. He just decided he was going to do it, and he did it. And the justification, ostensibly, was Venezuelan gang activity and drug trafficking. But critics immediately pointed out that the timing and execution looked a lot more like Trump doing a favor for American oil companies who want access to Venezuelan oil reserves. Scott Wiener called it an illegal invasion and coup ordered as a favor to American oil executives. And legally that matters, because if Trump used military force to advance private business interests, that's corruption. That's abuse of power. That's exactly what Article 3 is talking about. And Democrats pounced on it. Representative April Milan Delaney said the caucus should imminently consider impeachment proceedings. Representative Dan Goldman connected the dots explicitly, calling Trump's tactics illegal and unconstitutional, and warning it emboldens dictators around the world. Goldman's point is simple. Venezuela isn't just one bad decision. It's a symptom of Trump's broader contempt for constitutional limits. But there's a problem. House Democrats don't have the votes right now. They're in the minority. Even if they bring articles of impeachment to the floor, Republicans will vote them down. So Democratic leadership is being cautious. They worry it could backfire politically and help Trump play the victim. So leadership is holding back. But not everyone in the caucus is willing to wait. That CNN report about a rogue House Democrat forcing a surprise impeachment vote, that's internal pressure spilling out into public. And every time that happens, it gets harder for leadership to keep the lid on. And the Venezuela situation makes that pressure even more intense, because this isn't ancient history. This is something that happened during Trump's current term. It's fresh, dramatic, and easy to explain. Trump ordered military strikes against another country without authorization. That's simple. People can understand that. So Democrats pushing for impeachment can point to Venezuela and say, this is exactly why we need to act. And the longer Trump is in office, the more opportunities he has to do stuff like this. And Trump sees it. He sees the backlash. He sees the surprise floor votes. He sees Democrats using the word impeachable again and again. And he's reacting. He's going on Truth Social and at rallies warning his supporters that Democrats are coming for him again. He's telling crowds that if Republicans lose the House in the midterms, Democrats will impeach him a third time. He frames it as a witch hunt, an attempt to overturn the will of the voters. But by talking about it so much, he keeps the idea in the news cycle and reminds everyone he's been impeached twice already. That normalization effect works both ways. All right, let's break down what all of this means, because the pieces are connected. First, HRES 353 exists. It's real. It's sitting in the House with 7 detailed articles. And it means Democrats don't have to start from scratch if they decide to pursue impeachment. They already have the framework. They already have the categories of alleged abuse laid out. They just need the political will and the votes. Second, Venezuela. This operation is a clear example of executive overreach. Trump ordered military action without congressional authorization. And the circumstances make it even worse because this wasn't a clear imminent threat scenario where he could argue emergency necessity. This looks like unauthorized military force that also appears tied, at least in critics' framing, to benefiting oil interests. So it's not just overreach, it's potentially corrupt overreach, and it plugs directly into Article 3. Third, the internal Democratic dynamics. Leadership wants to be strategic because impeaching Trump without the votes to remove him could backfire. But the pressure inside the caucus is real, and it grows every time Trump does something like Venezuela. Because at some point, Democrats can't keep saying, this is impeachable, without either acting or admitting they won't. Fourth, Trump's response. He dismisses impeachment as partisan theater, while also making it a central part of his political messaging. He warns supporters. He fundraises off it. He uses it to drive turnout. And that tells you he's worried, because if he thought it was nothing, he'd ignore it. Fifth, the broader pattern. This isn't happening in isolation. Trump is facing contempt proceedings from Judge Boasberg over the deportation flights. He's seeing his hand-picked prosecutors get disqualified. He's dealing with multiple legal challenges. And now impeachment is back on the table. All of this together creates the picture of a presidency constantly fighting legal battles because it keeps pushing the boundaries of what's legal. And each new crisis feeds the impeachment narrative. Because impeachment isn't just about one offense, it's about a pattern, repeated abuses of power, and refusal to accept constitutional limits. Venezuela becomes one more data point in that pattern. So what happens next? The midterms matter a lot. If Democrats take back the House, impeachment becomes way more likely, because then they'll have the votes to pass articles of impeachment. They won't have to worry about Republicans blocking them. And if they win the House on a wave of anti-Trump sentiment, they'll claim a political mandate to act. That's what Trump is worried about. That's why he's warning supporters, because he knows that's the pivot point. And even if Democrats don't take the House, the pressure is still building. More Democrats are calling for it. More members are forcing votes. Venezuela gave them fresh ammunition. And Trump keeps doing things that can be argued as impeachable offenses. So impeachment stays in the conversation, and every time Trump escalates, Democrats can point back to the existing resolution and say, this is exactly why we need to use it. And here's the really important thing. This fight over impeachment is actually a fight over what kind of presidency we're going to have. A president constrained by the Constitution, or a president who does whatever he wants, ignores courts and Congress, and treats democratic norms as obstacles. Impeachment is the tool the Constitution gives Congress to check presidential power, to say, you've gone too far. And if Congress doesn't use that tool when a president commits what lawmakers argue are impeachable offenses, then what's the point of having it? What's the point of checks and balances if they never get enforced? So this isn't just about Trump. It's about whether the system still works, whether Congress still has the power to hold presidents accountable, whether impeachment means anything, or whether it's just become a political weapon used only when it's convenient. And Trump is testing that system every single day. He's pushing boundaries, he's defying norms, he's committing what Democrats argue are impeachable offenses. And the question is whether Congress will respond, whether they'll use the tools they have, or whether they'll decide it's too politically risky, too divisive, too likely to backfire. That's the calculation Democratic leadership is making right now. And Trump's warnings show that he's worried they might actually pull the trigger. Because if Democrats decide the political risk is worth it, if they decide the abuses are too serious to ignore, then that impeachment resolution stops being symbolic and becomes actual articles that get voted on. And Trump becomes the first president in American history to be impeached 3 times. And even if he survives in the Senate, even if Republicans protect him again, that's a legacy he can't escape. That's a historical judgment that will define his presidency forever. So yeah, Trump should be panicking, because impeachment isn't hypothetical anymore. It's active, it's live. It's waiting for the right political moment to go from resolution to reality. Come on, this is wild, and we're watching it unfold in real time. If you want to stay on top of this story, and trust me, it's going to keep developing, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell. We're breaking down the biggest political stories every day with no spin, no corporate agenda, just the truth.